Best recruit.
Absolutely.
Mixture.
They get their.
Absolutely. Which is why we have.
So
it's, it's a good thing, right? I mean, that's what you look for.
Which one do I hit?
What?
On air?
Does it say?
Well, they're perfect.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, try hitting it.
Right now?
And my only thing for that is, guys would do a toss and you know that you would.
Yep.
So we can't hire new people to send to the academy. These are line and laterals.
I did, how about you?
Is this your last meeting?
Depends on when the next one in January is scheduled for,
When's your last day?
the 6th.
We'll definitely have it before this. Is it the first month? Are you? Is it the 6th at 11:59 p.m.? 6 to 12 p.m.
I think it's the 6th, kind of whenever I want to walk out the door.
This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with section 19.83 and 19.84 of the Wisconsin State Statutes in such a form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call shows all trustees, all committee members present, with the exception of trustee Peeper, who may or may not be joining us via WebEx this evening. Moving on to item 3, citizen input. Please be advised that per section 19.84 subsection 2, that information and comment will be received from the public. It's the policy of this municipality that public input be limited to 3 minutes per person, with a time extension granted at the discretion of the chairperson. Be advised that there may be limited discussion of the information received, but no action will be taken under public comments. I would invite anybody from the public this evening to come up and give your comments at this time.
All right. Melanie Smythe, N140W17938 Cedar Lane. I have a question from another resident. They noticed there's been problems again with Channel 25. So I'm just asking the question, is the Channel 25 working tonight? Can anyone answer that question? Apparently there was a switch that got flipped and never got flipped back. So just so you know. My main comment for this public safety meeting is to do with the noise ordinance language. I read it and I think that the changes that are being made are making it harder for the police officers to do their job. It becomes very subjective when you have to go and there's no measurement tools, there's no guidance, there's some time frames. Reasonable to one person may not be reasonable to another. I just think it's really vague, and I think it's going to cause more problems. I think that there needs to be something better so that our police force are given better tools when they are managing some kind of noise problem. I know you've gone around and around on this, and the attorney is very against measuring things, but having a standard of some type is what everything else is measured against. And I think this group needs to help the police, public safety people be able to succeed in their jobs. Those are my comments. I don't have the answer. I don't know what the answer is, but I think it would be good if maybe you talk to some sound people. Perhaps some people can be brought in to discuss it, and not that the attorney doesn't know what he's talking about, but he's not the one that's actually doing the measurement. He's writing the rules, but he's not doing the measurement, and he's not a sound engineer. Thank you.
Seeing that there are none, Seeing that there are none, we'll move on to approval of the minutes from the November 12th meeting, please.
Move approval is presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Moving on to item 5A, please, the monthly police reports.
Thank you. I have attached a report from October of this year. Of note from last year was, as you know, high-speed pursuits for our department have increased dramatically over the last several years. And recently, we have been getting into several of those. Our officers are well-trained in determining when those should be terminated and when those should be continued. The vast majority are terminated within a very short period of time. Last month, we did have one that ended up going into the village of Jackson. During that pursuit, that offending vehicle did rear end another vehicle, causing that vehicle to roll over. The driver was uninjured. The vehicle was stopped. Ultimately, in Jackson, and there were several charges sent forward as a result of that pursuit. Uh, During the pursuit, one of our squads was going to assist and was responding lights and siren to the location. Attempted to proceed through the intersection at Landon and Maple and did end up T-bone another vehicle. That vehicle and our vehicle were both totaled, which is why you are seeing a request for a new vehicle on the agenda today. Minor injuries for our driver and the driver of the other vehicle, but I just wanted to explain kind of what that was all about for that vehicle coming up, but also just to let you know that we are still experiencing an increase in those pursuits, and we take them very seriously. Everyone goes through a review process, as that one did. We just had one recently that's going through another review process, so those aren't slowing down, and something that we're just going to continue to need to address moving forward.
Thank you, Chief Snow. Trustee Baum, please.
In a pursuit situation, are our vehicles covered by insurance?
They are covered by insurance.
This totaled vehicle will be covered by our insurance or not?
It will be in part. The equipment was not covered, so that's going to be, we have to determine what equipment we can still use out of the squad. The squad itself was covered in its entirety, but some of the equipment was not.
And if we are lights and sirens going and we run into an accident like this, is it on the citizens insurance?
Those two insurance companies will be debating this one, and we have not heard a resolution to this point.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Cutts, please.
When you're running reports, can you run specific traffic reports by location, like Pilgrim and Mequon Road?
We can.
So I'd be curious to know what accidents and what things happen in that area as we're starting to do visioning sessions and looking at doing something in that area. I'd kind of like to know what's currently happening that way. And I guess more traffic would be more problems. So I'm just curious about that, if we could get that.
We can certainly get you that information.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Cutts. Chief Delane, please.
Attached in your packet is our October report. You can see everything has pretty much been trending like it has been for the last year or so. Of note this year, on this report, is the fact that we have actually been giving less mutual aid than we had been in the past. If you look through last year's reports and those from prior years, we had been providing a lot more mutual aid, and the tables have kind of shifted a little bit now that we are receiving much more mutual aid. In addition to that, I just wanted to advise that yesterday we did have a house fire in the village of Germantown. It was a significant loss. Everybody was safe. Nobody was home at the time, and none of our firefighters were injured in the process.
Thank you, Chief Delane. Committee for Chief Delane. Anything to be gathered from the mutual aid, Chief, or no?
Yes, so since Menominee Falls increased their staffing, they have not been relying on us as heavily. So therefore, we are not going there on every fire call like we had been. That is the biggest takeaway from it.
And then the second question I had for you was, if we did include the motor vehicle accidents in the heat map, would that alter the heat map substantially of where we have incidents, or no?
It wouldn't alter it substantially, with the exception on 41. You'd see more spots on Highway 41.
There's no way we can get those in there.
Not that I've been able to figure out yet.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean I cannot request a specific map from them.
I think that would be very interesting to look at.
No problem.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions for Chief Delane, please?
Chairman Hudson,
Yes.
when I run those reports, I did find that it included motor vehicle accidents. So sometimes they're in the numbers, but they're not tied to a specific address. So they don't know generally where to land. So they're in the numbers, they're just not on the
Not
map.
on the map.
So they're in the numbers
Yep.
as an incident.
Thank you. Overtime reports. Chief Snow, please.
Tracking very consistent to the overall year, slightly down from October. We're anticipating the numbers will be largely the same. Next month, we are having several officers still in field training. So we anticipate that that's going to be helpful once they get onto solo patrol within the next month or so.
January of 25.
Correct.
Thank you. Questions about overtime for Chief Snow, please? Chief Delane, same question, please.
Fire department. Fire department is tracking as it was the prior month. That is still with 2 people out on light duty.
Are they expected back fully back anytime soon, Chief?
One will be back at the beginning of the year. The other one will be light duty until March.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Chief Delane, please? Policy updates. Chief Snow,
None for police.
Chief Delane.
None for fire.
Thank you. Moving on to unfinished business. Chief Snow, dispatch consolidation update, if any to give.
We have not met with the county in a couple weeks. We do have one scheduled for Thursday, so we'll have more information in the next meeting. However, the process on third shift has gone quite smoothly. No notable issues to speak of, so we are just waiting to be able to transition our day shift over would probably be the next step in that phased-in approach. So we'll know more after this meeting on Thursday when we can look to see that happen.
Okay. Questions for Chief Snow, please? Public safety building update. I guess this is me. I had a discussion with village staff, I believe last week. Sharpen their pencils and please come back with a more knowledgeable estimate for a combined building. So they are seeking that.
Okay.
Unfinished business item C, an ordinance amending section 907 of the Germantown Municipal Code related to noise disturbances within the village and creating section 12.03 of Germantown Municipal Code relating to permitting outdoor entertainment within the village. I would like to introduce our village attorney.
Just in case anybody isn't sure who I am. Good evening. Just wanted to just kind of highlight a couple things at the preliminary end. I suspect there will be some discussion. Last time this was on the agenda, unfortunately, we were not able to get our WebEx working. I was on. In fact, if you listen to the recording on YouTube, you'll hear me saying, can you hear me? You guys just couldn't. So I did hear at least some of the preliminary concerns, and I just wanted to kind of address that before we got into any details or questions that you may have. The first is, why are we here? You'll recall back in August, this committee talked a little bit about the noise ordinance and kind of the continuing issues that we're having with some of the properties within the community. One of those issues that had been identified was just the kind of discrepancy between the provisions in our licensing section for bars and restaurants and outdoor music, and then our normal noise code. There are also just some general concerns about, hey, are we kind of hitting the right, kind of regulations and desires in terms of what we wanted to regulate. And the committee basically directed me to come back with a draft and we'll take a look at it and go from there. And so that's why we're here. I know at least one trustee at the last meeting where we talked about this didn't seem to understand that process, but the committee nonetheless wanted to address this topic and look at it. Certainly, there is no thought necessarily that this is the final version. This was just a draft that was prepared as we had kind of talked about back in August in terms of let's look at something that is there and then go from there. Certainly, if we're happy with it, it can move on to the village board, but I guess I was not anticipating that. The other issue that kind of arose, and that was really, I think, as a result of we had a new bar that was also being licensed that evening. He spoke at kind of the beginning of the meeting, and it indicated that the village as a whole was just very unfriendly and difficult to work with, and that he viewed these regulations to be more of the same as it relates to that. Kind of roped into that discussion was just this kind of idea of, are we being reasonable? Is this something that's actually enforceable or not? Those types of concerns. I think all of you have been around long enough at this point that you've heard me talk about, one of the things we've heard is, we have to have a very, objective standard. Let's put a decibel level in the code and we'll enforce based on that decibel limit. You've heard me say that I'm not a fan of decibel limits within our code, and there's a couple of reasons for that. The biggest of which is that it makes enforcement much harder once we get to the circuit court level, or even the municipal court level for that matter. A handful of years back, actually a lot of years back now, the Supreme Court changed the rules of evidence in Wisconsin. We adopted what was kind of affectionately called the Daubert standard, which is a case that the Supreme Court of the United States had imposed various restrictions on testimony related to expert witnesses. And that process basically means that if you are going to have a witness that's going to testify as to something that requires specialized knowledge, i.e., sound waves, decibel meters, sound meters, those types of things, that you have to meet certain standards in order to get that testimony admitted. And if you're not able to do that, then that testimony doesn't get admitted. So in the case of a sound meter, that means that we have to have an officer who's trained at least in the basics of how sound works. We have to have an officer that's trained on the particular machine that is utilized. We have to make sure that that machine is regularly tested and certified on some objective standard that's there. That officer, just like they do with a radar gun, would need to make sure that that machine is working before they attempted to use it. And then most importantly, they would need to be able to testify as to all of the things that they understand about sound and how the sound waves work and everything else at trial in order for that testimony to be admitted. Not to say that that's an impossible task. But what it does mean is that you typically are only going to certify the officers who are utilizing the machine. It's not unlike our drug recognition experts, where we have a handful, I think, Chief, couple, that we send for specialized training on drug recognition enforcement, basically folks that are operating under the influence of some substance other than alcohol. They go through a very intense, rigorous training course in terms of all of the various things that they need to do. And they get called in on special cases to hey, can you look at this guy who we think maybe is intoxicated, but he's, we don't smell alcohol, but something's going on. So we have these guys come in and do that. If that guy doesn't happen to be on duty at that time, you don't get to call him in. Or you call him in and you pay overtime for him to come in and handle the case. The same thing would happen with decibel meters. We would need to, train a handful of officers perhaps in terms of what's going on. And then, if they're not on a particular night, means enforcement is going to be much more difficult because we're not going to have the ability to truly enforce it at the end of the day. Could any officer go out and say, well, you're reading above the limit, so turn it down? Certainly, but if we wanted to actually issue a citation based on that, that officer is going to need to meet that standard that the Supreme Court set as it relates to that. Now, the question is, we've got lots of examples of that type of thing where officers are utilizing machinery and, that they would need to testify. Radar units, for example. Your intoximeter, when you do the breath test at the station, all of those types of things are all similar type measuring devices that are there. The problem is that between either case law or statutes, we have exceptions for those where the courts have basically said, the science behind these is so well litigated at this point that we're not going to make an officer testify as to all that background knowledge. We're just going to make sure that they testify that the machine was working, it's certified, the things that the officer themselves can control, not necessarily all the background. There is, to my knowledge, and I did some legal research last week as we were kind of preparing for this, and I was not able to still find any case law that suggests that we are at the point with sound measuring devices that the courts are saying, yep, we're just going to accept that as bare bones common knowledge. It's been litigated enough. We don't need to keep doing this. And so I would anticipate any time that we do this, we would look to do to potentially have a challenge based on that Daubert standard that we talked about. For that same reason, I did talk to some of my colleagues. I think you've all heard me talk about the fact that we do a weekly Zoom call with the attorneys throughout the state. At one of those a couple weeks ago, I did raise the question with them, hey, who's utilizing, a decibel standard and who isn't and why. And the honest answer that I got was the couple that said that they had a decibel standard in their code told me that they haven't enforced based on that decibel standard in their entire time that's been there. And we're talking some fairly long tenured municipal attorneys in terms of that. They all kind of agree that it's just too much of a headache to do this. One of them indicated that it actually backfired on them in a case where they had a standard, and that the standard was whatever it is, 68 decibels, and it turned out that the noise of some property that was next door was actually higher. And so the argument was, well, you're citing me for a violation, but this other property, which isn't regulated because it wasn't a bar, is making more noise. Why am I being punished, kind of a thing? And so it became an issue for them where they did enforce a decibel level because the court said this just isn't a reasonable regulation that's in place because you're not taking into account all of the other factors that might go into it. Now, would you do a standard that said, it's got to be, within, 10 decibels, above the ambient sound level in the neighborhood or something like that? You probably could, but even there, you're now, we're going from that fixed standard to now the officer's got to make a determination of, when am I going to measure this? Am I measuring it when the truck's driving by on the freeway, or am I measuring it when it's just, dead silent because there's nobody around? All of those factors are going to play into it. Weather plays into it. I think you've heard me talk about the fact, anybody who lives reasonably close to the high school here will tell you that in the fall, you hear the high school football games and other games a lot clearer from farther away than you do during the summer. It's just the way sound works. And so, you sometimes need to be able to take those types of factors into account as well, which is what we've tried to do within the code as proposed. But obviously, at the end of the day, it's the board's purview in terms of, do we want a fixed standard or not? So.
Thank you. Trustee Baum, please.
Do we need a motion on the table first? What are we doing?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance as written.
I'll second for discussion.
We have a motion and a second. Trustee Baum, please.
So I understand people want something definitive and tactile. And I'm not sure where we can get that finite number from? I understand what you're saying, that we have to have this new technology that is usable, but yet we're not always going to have that on staff. We have to make an argument to courts that it is correct and appropriate, and they have the background to support it. Sounds challenging. Is there some other standard out there that we can go by? Because when I've been to these establishments, I bring up my phone, I turn on my app, and I go outside and read the numbers. But this is not admissible in court, and your phone will be different than my phone. Everybody's phone will be different. Yet, we have a continuing complaint from throughout the village that this is a problem. You're bringing forward no other solution to satisfy the residents.
Mm. Mm.
Tell me.
Attorney Sajak, please.
I would disagree with that. I think that one of the issues that we have was just the slight inconsistency between the language within the licensing provisions as it related to alcohol and the sign provisions as a whole. And one of the things that this particular version of the code does is that we create this outdoor entertainment license, which makes it one, it eliminates that inconsistency. The language is now consistent between the two, by and large. But it also puts us in a position where it's a permit that we're dealing with issuing and not just a license. You know, we've got case law that talks about with alcohol licenses that this is a property right. That if you're going to remove a property right, you have to give a full due process hearing. You know, we've had a couple, or at least had a couple that we almost went to. And we haven't had a full hearing in a handful of years at this point, but you know, it's a higher burden sometimes to remove that alcohol license than it is to just deal with the noise issues that are there. Likewise, I think that with the permit process, you're able to really narrow down much more specifically on some of the exact concerns that have been raised, i.e. the outdoor music that's being played. In terms of, you know, we're going to regulate the number of times potentially that you're going to be able to do it. You're going to regulate the hours potentially. All of those factors are expressly called out within the code that you know, if it's not working, we revoke the permit, we change the permit, we deal with it, as opposed to the kind of uncertainty of, you know, when it's tied to the license, you know, if we're modifying that, is that in some way impacting that property right such that we needed to give a hearing? And if we didn't, you know, is that going to get us in trouble? So I think, streamlines the process significantly. Now, is it going to magically stop all noise complaints? No. But if we had a fixed decibel limit that was in place, it's not going to stop all the noise violations either.
No, that didn't.
Talk to the folks. I mean, my partner, Attorney Weslowski, represents Franklin. I think they're on, their 9th draft of the agreement between the Rock and the city as it relates to the noise that's there, because they set a standard and then they implement it and they realize that there's issues with it, and so they modify the standard. And I think he said that they're on their 9th version of trying to figure out what that right decibel level was and what that looked like. It's not a perfect science.
So if I have a complaint and I call the police department, what can I expect under this new draft that I didn't get under the old draft?
Sure. First thing will be, the officer will determine whether or not they even, well, let me step back. We're talking about an outdoor type noise violation?
Sure.
Okay. So the first step will be to verify whether or not they have the outdoor entertainment permits or not. And then if they don't, that ends the discussion. That's a fairly easy ticket to issue. You have a permit, you didn't get it.
Sure.
If they do have a permit, then you verify whether or not you're operating in compliance. If permit says you can only go to 10 o'clock and it's 10:30, again, fairly easy violation issue. You're operating outside of your permit hours, here you go. If you get into a situation of, hey, the complaint is it's just too loud. It's 8 o'clock at night on a Friday, but it's just really obnoxious. That's going to be the same process we utilize now, which is the officer needs to go out and make a determination as to whether or not the noise level is appropriate, considering all of the various factors that are there. Factors would include the time of day, the type of situation that's going on, ambient noise around it, those types of things, and make a determination as to whether or not it's a violation or not, and then issue a citation or not based on that. But those first two steps, are really the bigger issues or the more problematic issues that we've had historically, where people are just operating outside of the time limit, and you just got to get there and confirm whether or not they're operating and issue the citation.
Go ahead.
Trustee Cutts, please.
Okay, so you're going to do a permit in addition to their liquor license. So when the police are called out, a ticket's issued, it's not issued, and then we have more complaints, then they're coming back before public safety and the village board, and then we decide if we're going to pull the permit?
So
So you're putting it back on us.
So thank you. And I would like a little bit more information about the permitting process, please.
Sure. So the answer is that it creates effectively two kicks at the cat for chronic violators, which is kind of another benefit to the process. The first is that you can revoke the permit. You come in, we've got some complaints, staff's recommending that we revoke the permit, and you go through the process to revoke the permit. The other thing that potentially happens is if you have repeated violations, a bar, and I don't mean to pick on bars, because obviously anybody, any business can apply for an outdoor permit. But, the business, has, multiple violations where they, operate until, 45 minutes after their time that they're supposed to stop. Those repeated violations in and of themselves could potentially be then the grounds to revoke the alcohol license down the road as well, which would eliminate the headache altogether by eliminating that particular operator. Generally, I would say you're not going to get that far. Most of the operators that we've had here in town over the years, by and large, respond fairly well to the threat of losing whatever permission they have to do something. It's, we've had two that have been a little bit problematic in my almost 13 years this year now, I think. And so, you got to deal with those two, and eventually they either straighten out and fly right, or they move on and somebody else takes over.
Right, but it does fall back on village board then for the final decision if you're pulling these.
Correct. Yes. Any permission that's granted by the body, i.e. the permit, would be removed by that same body. It's not something that staff could just, arbitrarily say, we're going to pull this away from you. There's still a process. It's just not the standards on that process are just a little bit more relaxed than they might be with, pulling of an actual alcohol license, for example.
Right, I'm just trying to figure out how we mediate that when we're not there to know what goes on. Then you're listening to sessions, what we've been through. So I'm just concerned about.
So
Not being completed.
if I may.
Yep.
So is the permitting process simply filling out a form, or is it do those go to the village board to issue the annual permits?
The permits are issued by the board. And so it would be something that the board sees on an annual basis, or I mean, assuming they go for an annual permit, if they wanted to go for a specific event permit, every time they had an event, they would come before the board to do that.
So much like, I don't know, whatever process we have. Those would come before public safety. There would be a hearing. Any concerns would give people affected the ability to speak up, and then the vote would take place.
Correct.
And that would be annual.
Yes, I mean, for any, any business that you anticipated numerous events throughout the year, I would anticipate that they would just get the annual permit and go that route. If it was somebody who was just planning on 1 or 2 a year, they might do, 2, but, they'll be back every year, assuming
Sure.
it's an annual type event.
Sounds like a wise compromise to me. Trustee Cutts, anything else, please? Trustee Bone, please.
So you believe this new rendition gives you the teeth you need, the board needs to sanction people, to get them to corrective measures?
Yes, I think it makes the enforcement process, a little bit more streamlined. It eliminates the kind of concern that we often hear when we're dealing with these types of things. Well, I don't want to mess with the license. I just want the noise stuff to go away.
Yeah.
By requiring that permit for the outdoor entertainment, you can just revoke that permit. You're still letting them operate. They can still have their bar. They can still do whatever they want to do. It allows you to just pull that permit and it eliminates that concern. And so it makes it a lot smoother and easier.
So if I may paraphrase, for example, if we have a facility that's having daily concerts, right? And we get repetitive noise complaints because the band is playing until 2 a.m. We have the ability to remove the daily concerts without affecting
Outdoors.
the core business. Yes,
Outdoors.
the core business of what they are doing.
Correct. And obviously if it was an indoor, concert that they were holding every day and we were getting complaints because of the indoor stuff every day, that's a totally different reflection of what's going on, because that's going to be, volume that is truly offensive. I mean,
Yes.
to carry beyond the outside of the 4 walls of the building, requires much more volume. And so
So what I am missing in this is I have a problem tonight. What do we do tonight to solve my problem? You're way too loud at 9:30. There's no recourse for that.
No, there absolutely is. You still have the ability, the police department still has the ability to make that determination when they show up at 9:30 at night and say, whoa, this is obnoxious. And they, just like as with anything that the police department does, they obviously have discretion. They may not issue a citation. They may just tell them to turn it down. But they may issue the citation. It's a violation of the noise code, because one of the provisions of the outdoor licenses, you have to otherwise comply with the provisions of the ordinance as well. So.
And that is the portion of this rewrite that is still subjective. Is it obnoxious or is it just a little too loud? Is it a lot too loud? Is it medium too loud? Is it a little too loud? A little too loud and medium are not obnoxious, but way too loud is obnoxious? Or is a little too loud obnoxious? That's the subjective part?
Correct. I mean, and as I say, I mean, you can't eliminate that completely short of going to a fixed decibel measurement of some nature, which in and of itself has problems too.
Yeah.
So you're trying to balance the enforceability with we need to be able to get results. And, the benefit, I guess, of just having it be a simple permit as opposed to the actual, full liquor license that you're dealing with, again, is that ability. It's much easier to just say, you know what? We've had 2 complaints. That's enough for us. We're gonna make changes, and you make the changes based on that,
Okay.
as opposed to going through the whole process of potentially revoking the license and litigation and all that kind of stuff.
Can you give me a little background of, at one point in history, we had a definite number. That did not work. That has been eliminated from our ordinance. What, did all the problems you have spoken about actually happen when we had that? Did they not get prosecuted because?
No,
they-
in fact, they did not. One of the reasons that we got rid of that at the time was that we didn't even have a noise meter in the village. We didn't even own one, and we had regulations that said that this needed to happen. And so it was a circumstance where we were not dealing with any of those things because number one, we didn't have the means of actually even enforcing it. And then number two, I think, although I'd have to go back and confirm for sure, I think that was also right about the time that the Supreme Court changed the rules of evidence, went from a much more relaxed standard to the more complicated standard that now we're now operating under. So-
Okay, and I'm gonna turn to the chief. Do we have in your staffing model a person or a couple of people that work the same shift hours every Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night?
None, no.
None.
Not at the patrol level. So yeah, that would be problematic because you would have to probably realistically have a couple officers on each shift and then it would still be a crapshoot as to whether or not they were working at that time. I mean, this goes to satisfy my major concern, which was, having those officers have to be trained as subject matter experts in this. When you look at the technology we're getting bombarded with right now and the mandatory training that we have to do right now with officers, if you look at our schedule, it's nonstop. Monthly training is just something that continues to increase, and this is another thing then that we would, I guess, burdened with, for lack of a better term.
Okay, no more questions.
Thank you. Trustee Cutts, anything else, please? We have a motion and a second. I'd like to take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item 7A, renewal of application for animal fanciers establishment permits for 2025. Information was in your packets. Committee?
To get it on the table, I'll make a motion to approve the renewal of the applications for animal fancier permits as presented.
A second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Discussion, please. Trustee Baum?
Chief, any complaints on any of these people?
No, we did check them over the last year and no issues.
Trustee Cutts, anything?
No.
Motions have been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. 7B is renewal application of secondhand article and jewelry dealer licenses for 2025.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Committee discussion, please. Seeing that there's no discussion, we'll take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Item C, dispatch bonuses. Chief Snow, I believe this is yours.
Thank you. I had, this is similar to we brought forward a few months ago as part of the transition process. We did talk to the county about issuing bonuses to dispatchers. The primary intent was to retain our dispatchers. And this is just part of that process that the county had agreed to make reimbursement for these numbers. And this is based off hours assigned and some training hours that when we agreed to train their dispatchers for them. And that's where these numbers come from. You see a much lower number for Hannah Weisflag is basically fills in now. She had been assigned to a clerical position. That's why that number is considerably lower than the others.
Thank you, Chief Snow. Trustee Baum, please.
Well, first off, I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Trustee Baum, please.
So I turned it on. This bonus is different from the last bonus? Am I remembering the same thing?
Basically the same bonus. We were just trying to go quarterly with the bonuses throughout the process.
So there was one a few months ago, which was that quarter. This is this quarter's.
Correct.
That's okay. All right. And this is reimbursed by the county.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Trustee Cutts, anything? Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes. Lastly, purchase of a new squad. Chief Snow, as you alluded before, please.
Yes, this is the squad that I spoke of earlier that was totaled as a result of that crash. We would like to get that ordered as quickly as possible. It does impact our fleet somewhat significantly. I'm trying to get this open here. So what we have in front of us is just the cost to order the squad. We still need to make determination on what equipment needs to be replaced, if any.
Trustee Bone, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of a squad as presented.
Second,
Motion has been made and seconded. Trustee Bone, please.
Okay, so how are we paying for this then? Insurance will cover it, may cover it.
Insurance will cover,
Right.
we'll cover the full amount of
yeah.
this squad, minus the $2,500 deductible, which would have to come out of our maintenance account. As far as when we find out what we need for equipment, that will be the bigger challenge.
Are we, I rarely know how insurance works. Are we covering the cost of this out of our reserve capital and then
Get
filling our
reimbursed.
reserve capital back? Or are we getting the car and insurance is gonna do what they do and we never?
Um, And Captain Merton is here. We did not get a check for that yet, correct? But typically, yes, they're fairly quick about getting the check to
Okay,
us.
so we'll get a check before, so it's not coming out of our, okay, for the car.
Trustee Cuts?
my question's been answered.
So we are out the $2,500 deductible
Yes,
and whatever uninsured equipment that we cannot use, correct?
that's correct.
And we have insurance companies that are gonna haggle over each other.
Yes, which is always a good thing.
Correct.
We'll take a vote. Committee, please. Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion passes. Lastly, next meeting date, please. First Monday in January is January 6th at 6 p.m. By law, we have to have this meeting on that date. I'm sure chagrin of Chief Snow, whose last day happens to be January 6th.
That's fine with me. Not that it's his last day, but it's fine with me to have that meeting on that day.
Next meeting date, 6 p.m., January 6th, 2025, in this room. Thank you. Have a good evening.
PM, January 6, 2025.